Nope.
There's no official name for Talon Island. The small island is roughly 450 feet long and 100 feet wide. Even this is subject to the water level of Kentucky Lake. I've seen the island larger and smaller depending on rainfall. It's not impossible to swim there, but I'd advise against it. It's near the middle of the main channel. For best results, use a boat. My friends and I have made several attempts to camp there, but each time we've hit a snag. Most recently, my friend Callie got into a car accident 15 minutes before we were supposed to meet at her place. Realizing that the plans would eventually fall through, I set out to the island by myself. It's not terribly hard to get there. With little more than a rowboat and a backpack of gear, I set out to camp on an island I've been dreaming about since I was a teenager. I departed from the boat dock at Irving Cobb and rowed into the main channel before drifting north a while. It wasn't long until I was pulling my small metal boat onto the shore and scouting a place to camp. It was around noon when I had gathered enough driftwood and rocks to build a small fire pit near the middle of the island. There wasn't much in the way of elevation, but I figured the highest point of the island would be the safest. One of the first things I noticed was the complete lack of cell reception. I wasn't worried though. It wasn't uncommon for a signal to be spotty on that side of the county. I set up my tent and prepped the fire for later. What followed was an afternoon of fishing and day drinking. It was around 8 and starting to get dark when I pulled my fish from the water and moved up to my campsite. Despite the few lights in the distance, the sky was rather free of light pollution. I lit the campfire and let it get going as I cleaned the fish and got ready for a night of camping under the stars. I spent the night huddled up in my tent, falling asleep to the comforting sounds of the local wildlife on the far shore to either side of the island. I woke up the next morning to a light, drizzling rain. The small drops of water sizzled as they hit the fire pit. Not wanting to spend a day on the small island with dark storm clouds on the horizon, I packed up my tent and moved down to the shore. It was around that time when I noticed that my boat was gone. It wasn't long before I was running up and down the shore looking for any sign of my boat. I had pulled it far enough up to the shore that it could not have floated away. The water hadn't even risen to the point where it could have been swept away either. I walked around the island a few times with my eye trained on the water and the distant shores, only to realize I had no chance of finding the small metal rowboat. The rain had picked up from a light drizzle to a steady pour, and I realized I was going to have to get out of the weather somehow. I wasn't looking forward to setting up my tent in the rain, but I knew it was the only way I was going to get any peace as the rain continued to pour. I must have looked like a sight. I was huddled up in an army surplus tent, sitting in my underwear as I hung my clothes to dry. The rain pelted the outside of my tent and made it impossible to focus on anything other than the sound of rain coming down. Despite this, I couldn't help but hear the sound of footfalls crunching on the rocky soil outside. Thinking my friends had finally come out to find me, I poked my head outside, only to see that I was alone. No sooner than I had poked my head out, I watched lightning strike the shore and the loud crash of thunder that immediately followed. The storm was directly overhead, and the lightning danced across the lake as the thunder boomed around me. One of the lightning strikes was so close that it lit up the inside of the tent for a brief moment. And in that moment, I thought I could see the silhouette of a man standing outside. I again poked my head outside, only to have a shower of water attack my face and hair. I scanned the area around my tent for any sign of movement, only to find nothing. Someone was there. I wasn't seeing or hearing things. I slipped on my swimming shoes and went out into the rain, wearing little more than my boxers as I decided to search the small island for any sign of the other occupant. The waves beat against the eastern shore as I walked north in search of anyone who might have landed on the island while I was trying to dry off. It only took a few minutes for me to completely circle the island, and once again, I couldn't find anyone. I returned to my tent to find that my clothes had been taken from the tent, along with my backpack. As the rain let up, I realized I was stuck on the island with no boat, no clothes, no fishing gear, and no phone. If there was someone on that island, they were either invisible or damn good at hiding. Gray, cloudy skies hid the sun from me as I contemplated my situation and tried to wrap my mind around how screwed I was. I briefly considered swimming to shore, but knew better than to cross that channel after a fresh rain. I was stuck without food, and my only shelter was an army surplus pup tent that barely survived the last storm. I could already see darker clouds to the south, and I knew I was in for one hell of a storm compared to the last. It rained for 2 solid days. I hadn't bothered telling anyone I was coming, and I couldn't trust that anyone was looking for me either. I made it through the last days by trying to arrange rocks on the shore to say the word shit. I wasn't sure if anyone would show up if it said help, but I knew a curse word would offend local sensibilities enough that someone would show up and help. I worked all day to get that message sent, only to come out of my tent the following morning and see that all the rocks were gone. In those 2 days, I barely ate. I survived off of rainwater and the one edible plant that grew on the island. Despite this, 2 days of raw cattail and rainwater had me ready to devour an entire cattle farm. The rain wasn't letting up, and something on the island was ruining any chance I had for signaling for help. I decided to throw caution to the wind and attempt to swim away while I still had the energy to do so. It was roughly 800 feet to an adjacent island, and another 1,000 to the shore. There were a few houses there, but I hadn't seen any lights in them for the past 2 days. I figured the power was out or something. The storm had been pretty bad after all. Now, I'm not the best swimmer, and I have to admit that the first leg of the swim was difficult as hell. I thrashed against the water as it seemed intent to pull me down and to the side. Even then, my biggest fear was being struck by lightning in the middle of the water. I was less than 100 feet from the next island when my thrashing about proved pointless, and I was pulled under by the current of the lake. The undertow had pulled me, and I thought I was done for. For a brief moment, I even felt something scrape against my back before I felt the cool air on my arm and fought to right myself and get a breath of precious air. I saw a shore in front of me, and I started to beat my arms and legs as hard as I can in order to reach it. When I did, though, I realized I was back on Talon Island. And to make things even worse, I was able to see from where I was standing that my tent was gone. I screamed and I cursed as I stormed around the island looking for any trace of my belongings in vain. My arms and legs were sore from my attempt at swimming, and the stinging on my back made all the more sense when I went to probe it with my left hand and pulled back, only to see that the rain was washing away blood from my fingers. I screamed more and I cursed more as I set about the small island, trying to build anything that resembled a shelter. It was clear to me that something wasn't letting me leave, and I wasn't about to die on that damned island. It was another dinner of raw cattail before a night curled up in the fetal position, trying to find anything resembling warmth on a pile of leaves nestled under a lean-to made of branches and driftwood. It was during that night that I finally saw him. It was a naked man with a long beard, standing at the edge of the shore. He stared right at me with a blank expression as I tried to pull myself further into the makeshift shelter. A flash of lightning in the distance flickered, and the man was gone. There was something so incredibly unsettling about him that left me unwilling or unable to fall back asleep. I spent the rest of that night half alert as I tried desperately to survive. At some point, I did fall asleep. I woke up the next morning sore and tired. The sun was low in the sky, and the water seemed to have calmed down a little bit. I didn't think so much as move toward the shore where the man had been standing when I walked into the water and swam to the next island, this time without incident. I was on autopilot as I made the last stretch to the shore and walked up the beach toward the first house I saw. I must have looked something awful as I stood there in my soaked boxer shorts with cuts and scrapes all over my body. I think I might have gotten out 2 words when the owner opened the door before I finally collapsed. The police think I'm crazy. My boat was found downstream a few miles, with my bag, clothes, and tent inside. I told the story to the staff at the hospital, and later to the police, and in both cases I was confronted with the discovery of my boat having drifted so damn far away. I told them about the 3 days I had spent on that island, and the man who had been stalking me, only for them to tell me I had been gone for more than a week. My friends and I aren't planning on going camping anymore this summer. I don't know who or what was messing with me on that island, but one thing is certain: I was not welcome there. So please, if you are considering a camping adventure around Kentucky Lake this summer, don't camp on Talon Island. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's story, and if you did, remember to smash that like button down below and subscribe for future videos if you haven't done so already. Alright everybody, so I'm planning the first official Nope Too Creepy camping experience. It's going to be on Talon Island. I need you to leave your name, and I'm just kidding guys. We're not going to do that, at least not on Talon Island. It'll be somewhere a lot creepier if we ever do a group outing. Alright, enough pipe dreams. Everybody, I really hope you're dealing with the post-Halloween blues better than I am. It's seriously got me down, but I'm looking forward to the future, and I've got some excellent stories planned. So, until next time, stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.